20 miles from the market where the Chinese government claims the coronavirus first came from. The Wuhan Institute of Virology undertook coronavirus experiments on mammals captured more than 1,000 miles away in Yunnan, which were funded by a $3.7 million grant from the US government. Sequencing of the COVID-19 genome has traced it back to bats found in Yunnan caves, but it was first thought to have transferred to humans at an animal market in Wuhan. The revelation that the Wuhan Institute was experimenting on bats from the area already known to be the source of COVID-19, and doing so with American money, has sparked further fears that the lab, not the market, is the original outbreak source. Lawmakers and pressure groups were quick to hit out at US funding being provided for the dangerous and cruel animal experiments at the Wuhan Institute. So that's the first part of the story, right? That apparently these original claims that it really whistleblowers in China had first indicated that this was a coronavirus that originated in a lab, not in a market, and that experiments were being done on animals, specifically on bats, that allowed this to get out into the public. That has already been out there. And then media has tried to quash that as calling it a conspiracy theory. Well, here's another part of this. So not only was $3.7 million given specifically by the US government and the National Institutes of Health for studying coronavirus in these bats. The study was headlined, "Discovery of a Rich Gene Pool of Bat SARS-Related Coronaviruses Provides New Insights into the Origin of the SARS Coronavirus." But beyond that, we also now know that NIAID, the department associated with the National Institutes of Health, of which Dr. Anthony Fauci is in control, had already been conducting experiments with the Wuhan lab in the past in regard to coronavirus. Dr. Anthony Fauci's National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, actually funded a study on bat coronavirus, which was a project that included scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the Chinese lab at the center of the controversy over their bat research.
2005, I believe, the original SARS outbreak. Scientists all over the world began essentially studying for vaccines and studying these different strains of coronavirus, as well as studying different strains of influenza virus, attempting to basically find what is known as gain of function. And it's confirmed in 2014 when the White House office banned the use of gain of function research. Gain of function research studies with the potential to enhance the pathogenicity or transmissibility of certain potential pandemic pathogens, or PPPs, have raised biosafety and biosecurity concerns, including the potential dual-use risks associated with the misuse of information or the products resulting from such research. So it's talking about the dual use of gain-of-function research. In other words, we are talking about this is a Pandora's box that has been opened here. Moratorium on risky virology studies leaves work at 14 institutions in limbo. So it goes on to say, last month in an unusual step, the US government announced a pause in federal funding for virology studies that involve tweaking influenza, MERS, and SARS viruses in ways that could make them more transmissible or pathogenic in mammals. The government encouraged everyone conducting such gain-of-function projects to voluntarily pause while experts spend a year hashing out the risks and the benefits of these studies and developing a policy for when to allow them, which that's what they did, is they eventually finished their policy in 2017. But so another main point that I want to make sure to mention, within all of these films and all of these predictive dystopian stories, is that they all begin with some sort of cataclysmic or world-shifting event, basically like the one we're now experiencing. Only it's usually projected that it was some sort of, nuclear holocaust or some sort of zombie outbreak that took over that swept the world or and that's what that's the dystopian controller's wet dream. That's what they're all pushing for. That's the end goal of a lot of these level 4 laboratories and things. They went ahead and allowed the they decided that the gain of function studies are necessary. I am imagining. For example, if for some reason, anyone would happen to desire to want to create a sort of problem to spread so that they could also create the solution to it, such as creating a super weapon and creating the vaccination for it, which is what these gain-of-function studies are all about, is to test the transmissibility and the pathogenicity of these strains in order to find effective cures or effective treatments for them. That's what these studies, that's what the study is saying here. It literally says, in addition to offering preparation against future emerging viruses, this approach must be considered in the context of the US government-mandated pause on gain-of-function studies. It goes on to say, on the basis of these findings, scientific review panels may deem similar studies building chimeric viruses based on circulating strains too risky to pursue, as increased pathogenicity in mammalian models cannot be excluded. It then goes on to conclude, together these data and restrictions represent a crossroads of gain-of-function research concerns. The potential to prepare for and mitigate future outbreaks must be weighed against the risk of creating even more dangerous pathogens. In developing our policies moving forward, it is important to consider the value of the data generated by these studies and whether these types of chimeric virus studies warrant further investigation versus the inherent risks involved. Is that not just utterly creepy? Is that not some utterly shocking revelations?
What else are we not listening to that we need to take action on now?
Well, the idea of a bioterrorist attack is kind of the nightmare scenario because they're a pathogen with a high death rate would be picked. Now, the good news is, I'm not trying to depress you, it's tough enough right now. Most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1, most of the work we'll do to be ready for that are also the things we need to do to minimize the threat of bioterrorism.
Stephen Colbert was pushing on his audience was the idea that Bill Gates had predicted pandemic 1, this current pandemic, a couple of years ago, and that nobody had listened. And the reason that Bill Gates said what he has said on screen here at the moment is because Colbert asked, what is the next thing that you're predicting that we should all be listening to? So I'm going to say we probably should be listening to what Bill Gates is talking about here. I think the look on his face there, I chose a still from the video because I think that's quite appropriate. This is his attitude. He loves what's going on at the moment. I think that he is expecting a pandemic too, and he is also expecting bioterrorism to be not too far down the road as well. We've got to be fearful in our beds. They're going to combine this narrative of the pandemic along with the war against terrorism narrative and ramp this fear factor up significantly over the next period of time.
So Stephen Colbert was blowing smoke up Bill's proverbial scuzzy port about predicting this first pandemic, and then Bill Gates just casually drops this bioterrorism talking point in there. Government's not even talking about bioterrorism yet, Mike.
To know that where do we think that these story writers and these filmmakers get their ideas put out constantly in the Hollywood CIA branch of the movie industry?
Security, we have a break-in. Get to section. I know who you are. I know what you think you're doing.
You don't want to get hurt. Keep your mouth shut and don't move a fucking muscle.
The chimps are infected. They're highly contagious. They've been given an inhibitor.
Infected with what?
In order to cure, you must first understand.
Infected with what?
In order to cure, you must first understand.
Infected with what?
Rage. What the fuck is talking about?
Get the cages open.
No!
Listen, you sick bastard. We're going and we're taking your torture victims with us.
We're going to get you out of here.
Listen, the animals are contagious. The infection is in their blood and saliva. One bite. Stop! You've no idea!
Matt Gaetz said, allegedly, according to this article, I haven't found the primary source of where he said this in a quote, but I'll give it at face value. He says, I'm disgusted to learn that for years the US government has been funding dangerous and cruel animal experiments at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which may have contributed to the global spread of coronavirus and research at other labs in China that have virtually no oversight from US authorities. On Saturday, Anthony Bellotti says, president of the U.S. pressure group White Coat Waste, condemned his government for spending tax dollars in China, adding, animals infected with viruses or others otherwise sickened and abused in Chinese labs reportedly may be sold to wet markets for consumption once experiments are done. It's the same thing. First, it started out with atomic warfare, where they were playing with fire from the gods, essentially, allegorically. It was only on a macrocosmic scale. Now we are inverting to the microcosmic scale, where the only threats to the top species on Earth are the invisible enemies, the microbes. And so we are talking about playing. Once you unleash this technology, once someone makes a certain weapon, then it opens the Pandora's box that you can't put it back in. The only way to stop someone unleashing a super weapon is to create, another super weapon to stop the first super weapon that was already created. So that's what it's talking about with the potential dual use risks associated with the creation of this type of science. Is when you open this Pandora's box, it's going to happen. Inevitable. It's only a matter of time. If it hasn't happened yet, it's only a matter of time when you are playing with that sort of. And so that's why on October 16th, 2014, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy announced the launch of the U.S. government's gain-of-function deliberative process to reevaluate the potential risks and the benefits associated with certain gain-of-function experiments. During this process, the United States government paused the release of federal funding for gain-of-function studies anticipated to enhance the pathogenicity or the transmissibility amongst mammals by means of primary respiratory droplets of influenza, MERS, or SARS coronaviruses. The U.S. government considered the NSABB's findings and recommendations during the deployment of policy on gain-of-function research. In 2017, the U.S. government released policy guidelines for the review and oversight of research anticipated to create, transfer, or use enhanced PPPs, potential pandemic pathogens. So let's see, what is this? So does this mean that they reinstated the research in 2017 to go ahead to move it? So they banned it in 2014. Did they react? It says they reviewed it and oversight. And so this gain-of-function research was being conducted at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, located 20 miles from the seafood market. This institute was funded $3.7 million from the National Institutes of Health and NIAID, which is associated with Dr. Anthony Fauci. So stay tuned for the next part. We'll pick up right here where we left off. You can watch it. I will leave any intros and stuff out so that you can watch it in a consecutive style. And so again, my name is Cullen Smith. This is Lifting the Veil. You can find all of my full books, presentations, videos, films, articles, posts at patreon.com/liftingtheveil. And there is also a ton of exclusive content, and I will leave the cited reference links in the description down below. So you can check that out for all of my full content, and I will see you guys in the next video. I rely solely on word of mouth, and the recommended algorithms are not recommending any of my videos or films anymore. My channel has literally been completely restricted, so I rely on your help by sharing my work around if you appreciate it, and leave me your comments. I definitely want to know what you have to share and what you have to think about all of this stuff, and I will see you in the next video.